this is your wake up call. If you've spent most of your life saying, I'm an ear musician, I get by fine without reading, I can just listen to the recording, that's how I learn everything. Wait, hold on, I got this one. I'm going to give you 5 reasons why you need to start learning to read music. First, let me say who this video is for and just give you a couple caveats. This video is for the tab blasting guitarist, the self-taught pianist. Pianist? Is that a word? No, it's not. And punk bass players. Also those who are still getting through those first rough years of learning to read and wanting to jump off before they become proficient. I hopefully will just give you enough encouragement, enough reasons to stick with learning to read music so that you can really keep up the good work and learn a very valuable skill. I do need to do a quick set of disclaimers, which is if I had to poll all the musicians I know who work professionally, I would say 70% of them identify primarily as ear players, meaning they prefer to play music by learning it by ear first and then reading. And right around maybe 30%-ish that they don't necessarily know how to read really at all. Of course, you don't have to know how to read to go far in music, but I just want to let you know what you might be missing out on and some good reasons why reading can help you even if you have a strong ear background to begin with. The first thing I want to say is you can learn music without ever hearing it. Now, this may sound like not that profound of a point, but sight reading really is the fastest way to learn a part. It beats out all others. Just think about it for a second. Let's imagine that you are the best ear musician and then you have the best sight reader. If I say, hey, we're going to play this part for this song, we're going to play Africa in 2 minutes. The ear musician grabs their phone, puts it by the ear, they're listening. They don't even get through the whole song in 2 minutes. Now, they're amazing at that. So those 2 minutes that they listen to, boom, they play perfectly. But the sight reader can actually just scan through the whole sheet of music before the 2 minutes is over, sit down and play, and they have a much better chance of playing the whole entire part accurately because, again, you can play music first time just reading it. You don't ever have to have any prior input. That's the big problem, in my opinion, with learning stuff by ear. You always rely on having a prior input, a prior context before you start playing. With sheet music, you can do something literally on the spot. The second is access to more music. Let's face it, this is a little bit of a caveat to saying reading is so good. Every type of music does have a specific way that it's more easily digestible. Some styles are very much built around community, right? Where you're learning them from others. Some styles are built around recordings and listening to the recordings and learning from there. Some styles are more by rote, so you're just watching a teacher play and then you copy. Some styles, though, are really based on reading. Classical, of course, is the most notable. Now, I actually am a huge fan of learning classical songs better by listening to recordings, but that's a subject for a different video. For this video, I want to focus on the fact that you're missing out on certain materials if you keep yourself only in the ear side of things. The third thing that I want to bring up is music theory sticks easier. Okay, again, you're going to have immediate counterexamples. Of course, there's counterexamples to everything, but I do want to make the general common sense point that if you can look at something written down, it's going to stick in your head a bit easier than trying to do the same thing without having it written down. And yes, people learn differently, but it's just another tool in the tool shed. If you can look at those chord stacks and see those notes and visualize it and analyze and compare, it can really help to make music theory feel like something that's much more concrete than something more ephemeral and just out there. The fourth is orchestrating and arranging. Modern tools have made this less necessary, to be honest, because I can sit down at my computer with a whole set of MIDI instruments and I can write different string parts by playing them into my keyboard and it will transcribe them beautifully. And then I can send the recording to the string player, or I can send some terribly written sheet music from Sibelius, Automated, or Logic, one of these digital audio workstations. I know Sibelius is a notation program. I'm just mixing things up. But the idea is I don't have to actually know how to read music to be able to write parts to send to other musicians in 2025. That honestly is a crutch. And if you are serious about communicating to other musicians and orchestrating parts for them, I highly encourage you to learn how to read and write. Some of the best composers of large ensemble music, the way they actually learned how to write big ensemble music is to look at the scores, the physical scores of all the music, and transcribe them, write them out by hand. That was how Schoenberg learned. That was, I believe, how Rimsky-Korsakov learned. Tons of people learn that way, of just copying it by hand and seeing the music, because then you see the visuals of all the instruments and which instruments are copying each other and so on and so forth. Belaboring this point, but you get the idea. It's a very helpful way to not only learn how to orchestrate and arrange, but also to orchestrate and arrange. Communicating with others. This is the fifth and potentially the most important point. Music is very communicative. And the more ability you have to talk to someone else about music, the better off you're going to be in your music career, in your musical experience. And it's just another tool. It's not necessary. There are tons of musicians that communicate in many different ways without ever having any reading background, anything like that. They can figure it out. But just because you can do something a certain way doesn't mean that that's the best way to do it. Of course, there's always counterexamples. Going back to the orchestrating and the arranging, Hans Zimmer, most notably, he doesn't write stuff out for the most part. He just records things into his keyboards and then uses that as a basis to send things out and get it recorded by professional musicians and so on and so forth. The exception proves the rule. What that means is just because Hans Zimmer can do it, you're not Hans Zimmer. I'm not Hans Zimmer. And we want every tool at our disposal so we can be the best musicians that we can be. So, I'm going to also point out one more big caveat to all of these things I'm talking about, which is music notation, I think, is in many ways becoming increasingly outdated. You can look at things such as key signatures. Yes, keys are still very ubiquitous, but it's becoming increasingly more common to write things in ways that don't really make sense with the way key signatures are traditionally thought of. And so we kind of need a music theory, music notation update for modern times with MIDI and modern technology. I don't know what it really looks like. If you have any ideas, I'd love to hear them. You can comment below. And I just want you to just sound off and go, hey, do I find myself missing out on opportunities because I don't know how to read? Would reading increase my music enjoyment in some way? And the final thing I want to say is, it's not as hard as you think it is. It is quite challenging. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's quite challenging to learn to read. But if you take it slow, if you set reasonable expectations for yourself, one of the big things I always mention is, you have to understand the density of the music that you're looking at. If you're looking at something that is really easy and there's not very many notes per line, it can be quite easy to read. As you get into harder stuff like Baroque era music, the density of the notes increases. And so it's like reading pages out of a book written in the 1800s. You're not going to have the same expectations that you had when you were reading the Boxcar Children as a kid. I'm Robert Monroe. I hope you enjoyed this video. And until next time, like and subscribe. It super helps. Comment below if you think that reading is as important as I do. And until next time, have a great day.